Wolf Pack, what is going on? It's your boy, the Wolf of Roto Street. RotoStreetJournal.com, we breed and feed you fantasy wolves. Here with your Week 3 waiver wire. Who are the guys you have to dig into and make sure to spend that FAAB, that top priority? There are a handful of them here on the Week 3 waiver wire that I do think are worth a high amount of that precious waiver wire dollar or priority order. And we are going to dive into them position by position, and then I'll give my overall top 10 ranking at the end. I'll make sure to give those FAAB recommendations along the way as well to help you plan it out. But of course, as always, let me know what waiver wire questions you have as well. And if you enjoy the show at any point, please do consider that thumbs up button right at the beginning here. It really does help us get out to more people. So thank you again so much for being here. Let's dive right in from the jump with our quarterbacks for Week 3. And I cannot believe I'm saying this, but Derek Carr is my number one quarterback pickup of the week. And honestly, a low-end QB1 moving forward is what this is looking like because of the rebirth of the Saints offense under Clint Kubiak. 47 points in Week 1, 44 points in Week 2. They lead the entire NFL in points scored, and they scored on 15 straight possessions across those two games. The only time they didn't score was when they were resting their starters at the end of Week 2. They now rank first in pre-snap motion, third in play action rates after being bottom 2 in both of those categories last year, and it is having a great effect clearly on Derek Carr, who has 21 and 22 fantasy points across his first 2 starts. He's first in completion percentage, first in passing touchdowns with 5, number 1 in quarterback rating, number 5 rather in QB points per game, quarterback 2 actually in total fantasy points. So this guy is cooking, and he gets the Eagles, the Falcons, the Chiefs, the Bucks in the next 4 games, all matchups I could see them wanting to continue to pile on the points. So Clint Kubiak, Derek Carr, this offense is cooking, and he is my number 1 quarterback ad. But not far behind is Sam Darnold, who is sitting right now as the quarterback 9 in total fantasy points, 3rd in passing touchdowns on the season, looking phenomenal in Kevin O'Connell's it's a genius scheme. In 2 years calling plays now, he ranks 3rd and 4th in pass attempts. He ranks 2nd and 1st in passing yards. Last year, yes, 1st in passing yards despite a carousel of Kirk Cousins at first, and then we had Nick Mullins, Josh Dobbs, Jaron Hall, and still they ranked number 1 in pass yards last year. They've thrown 30 touchdowns in back-to-back seasons. Both were top 4 in the league, and right now they're sitting 3rd in passing touchdowns with Sam Darnold just looking like a stud. This offense makes it so easy for whoever is under center. Just great schematics, getting people open, using motion, using play action, all that great stuff from that Sean McVay tree we are seeing here. And last week, the first time we really saw them push the Vikings against the 49ers, a good, strong defense. And Darnold puts up 268 yards, 2 touchdowns, adds 32 rush yards. I wanted to emphasize that given just a few seasons ago, 2021, Sam Darnold actually led the NFL through the first 4 weeks with rushing touchdowns when he had 5. He's more mobile than what people give him credit for. We're still seeing some Sam Darnold-esque throws, a couple bad interceptions, but ultimately 3rd in explosive pass rate right now as well. So I love both these QBs. I think both need to be rostered in leagues of any size, especially if you're having quarterback woes, and there's a good chance you are with the way passing is down across the league. I love adding both of those guys, probably 10-ish% or so of my budget if I needed a QB badly. Now, moving on to maybe the number 1 story of this week. The thing, if you get it right, could yield humongous results. That's the Chiefs' backfield. Isaiah Pacheco is out 6 to 8 weeks at minimum. So the soonest we will see him is likely Week 10. And we are now wondering, Samaje, Perine, Carson, Steele, Kareem Hunt now. That's why I'm happy wait until today to do this show, because that does change things up quite a bit. But who is going to be the guy, if any of them, and why does it matter so much? Should we get it right? Well, let's look at the history of Chiefs running back 2. 2022, CEH gets hurt. McKinnon in 6 games as the starter, 20 fantasy points per game, 5 targets per game, goes absolutely ballistic. We saw McKinnon also go crazy in 2021. CEH gets hurt, and in those playoff games, he averaged 18 points per game and nearly 6 targets per game for Jerick McKinnon. 2021, Darrell Williams takes over as the starter, and he averages 17 points per game and 5.4 targets per game. Then we had Dame Williams take over as a starter the year before, 24 points per game and 5.5 targets per game. Can you sense the trend? The number 2 back has been a fantasy monster, and in particular, gotten some sweet passing game usage. And that's why if I had to pick any one of these guys, it would be Samaje Perine, given the pass-catching role he was already starting to climb his way into, and now I think that's only going to get elevated. Last year, Perine was the number 1 running back in yards per route run with 2.22. He was running back 7 in targets per route, and he also has been a 75 or higher PFF graded pass protector in back-to-back seasons. He's already ticketed for that third down role. We saw that start to get elevated more and more as Perine has had more time with this team. Don't forget that he got cut on the third final week of the preseason, and literally within a day, Andy Reid had this guy on the phone, brought him right in. He saw and cited that Jerick McKinnon role as something we want him to fit into, and that has typically become the lead back in the absence of a starter because the Chiefs go so pass heavy in these type of situations when they lose their number 1 guy, and they ultimately just want someone to keep Pat Mahomes upright, and ultimately yields really strong value for that back. And it's not like Perine has never been a capable workhorse. In fact, in 2022, when he was with the Bengals and became the starter, he averaged 23.4 points per game in his 3 starts while Joe Mixon was out. 15 touches, 82 yards, and 3 touchdowns, 30.2 fantasy points, 21 touches, 4 catches, 93 yards, and a score, 19 fantasy points. And then 27 touches, 6 catches, and 155 yards, 21 fantasy points. Those were his 3 starts. He was on pace for nearly 120 targets and 85 catches. It's not pretty, it's not flashy, but he just churns and is always falling forward. He's a strong bulldozing guy that averaged 11 or running back 11 in points per touch when he got work that season. Ultimately, I think Perine is the guy I'd go with, given the pass-catching skill set, given his history as a feature back, given the fact that, Kareem Hunt, he does throw a wrench in these things, but ultimately they had all summer they wanted to call Kareem Hunt. And it was when Perine got available, the quickest thing they could do was dial him up. And they already talked about how Kareem Hunt is going to be on the practice squad for at least the first week, potentially the first few weeks here. But we'll talk about him in a second. Let's talk about Carson Steele, who seems to be the guy that everyone is going to first. He had more carries so far, Wolf. He was the one that got the carries at the end of the game when Isaiah Pacheco was out. I don't know that I really care about 9 carries on the season. I get it. Perine has exactly 0. But what has Steele done on those carries? 27 yards, 3.0 yards per carry, lost a fumble. In the preseason, we got some good glimpses. And I don't want to discredit Steele. If I can't get Perine, I certainly am more than happy to add Steele because there is some upside here. On the preseason, he did rack up 87 yards, 2 touchdowns on just 11 carries, 7.9 yards per carry. That was that 37-yard touchdown skipper. Sure, it came against accountants and fourth stringers, but ultimately it was really impressive tackle breaking, and Steele did have some really impressive tape coming out of Ball State. Again, not the most prestigious university here, but had 1,722 yards and 16 touchdowns on 318 touches, goes to UCLA in his junior year, 1,010 yards and 8 touchdowns on 184 touches in this committee backfield, looking really solid, looking really capable as a potential bell cow there. And we did have Andy Reid say Steele, he's kind of a tweener guy, heck of a running back. You see him out here running the football, does a pretty good job. What he did at Ball State was unbelievable. UCLA, unbelievable. We're maneuvering around and seeing if he can do the fullback stuff. Looks like so far he can, and then we'll just see from there. So, maybe a glorified fullback, but he has gotten some carries so far. He has been the one to step up. But I'm seeing a lot of people like, oh, it's the bulldozer. That's who they want. Well, Samaje Perine is heavier and ran a faster 40, plus has the track record, plus has the pass back blocking skills. So to me, I don't think this is just a guarantee that, because Steele has the 9 carries so far this year, he's automatically the one that comes in. Sure, he played more snaps in week 2. Again, the fumble, some concerns there. I do think also Perine coming new to this backfield. Maybe he was still learning the ropes. So I do lean with him. Of course, though, Kareem Hunt coming in here, he had 9 touchdowns last year. We know that great history here with Andy Reid. Only Jamal Charles, who has 19 20 PPR point games under Andy Reid, only he has more such games, with Kareem Hunt coming in second at 11 20-plus PPR point days under Andy Reid. Now, this is not the same Kareem Hunt. That was years ago. He is certainly slower, certainly not as dynamic, but he does have a 3-down skill set. He does have familiarity with the Andy Reid scheme. But again, Pete Sweeney tweeting out and saying that, yes, they're signing him. They liked how he looked physically, but they're still going to take a few weeks to get him back into game shape. So we have some time here for either Perine or Steele to separate. Again, my bet is on Perine. And if they don't, then yeah, maybe Kareem Hunt does come in here and ultimately take over the majority of that work. I still don't buy that, though. I think if Perine shows well, or whoever gets the featured role, again, I think it's Perine, will ultimately get the chance to hold on to that for the time being until Isaiah Pacheco returns. All that to say, so how do you pay this out? What do you bid on these guys? Had Hunt not signed here, I probably would have said 50 to 60% minimum on both of the lead guys here. More of it going to Perine, maybe a 25 to 30% bid on Steele. But the ceiling does feel a little capped. It is a little bit scarier here now that Hunt has arrived. So I would recommend right around 25% or so for Perine, right around 15 to 20% on Steele, and then maybe about 15-ish, maybe 10 on Hunt himself is how I would play this out. But if you're desperate at running back, let's say you lost Pacheco himself, maybe you have, like me, McCaffrey on the IR with no Jordan Mason. What was I thinking? If you are desperate for a running back and you need somebody, it's probably worth taking that 30, 35%, making sure you get this guy, because it could ultimately be a true feature back. And again, 20-ish points per game. We've seen it from McKinnon, Darrell Williams, Damian Williams. The number 2 running back with the Chiefs have thrived before, and one of these guys could be the next one to do it, even if there's also an ugly range of outcomes here as well. The remaining running backs on my list mostly follow that kind of quote-unquote handcuff with benefits, but we'll go in order of the ones I would prioritize, starting with Braylon Allen. Sees 36% of the snaps, 30% of the rush attempts, 9% target share, and ultimately turns that into 19.6 fantasy points. Running back 6 on the week, looking damn good. The youngest player to ever record a touch in NFL history. Man, if anything did ever happen to Breece Hall, you would be blowing everything. It is very clear that at minimum he's separated from Isaiah Davis. All the backs there. Izzy Akanabandu. He is the guy here, Braylon Allen. And I love everything I'm seeing from him. So unlike Perine, those guys where it's like a 25, 30% or so bid, you could get Braylon Allen as the starter. You'd be paying literally all 100 of your dollars. Go out and get him right now. I do think he also has some upside in a matchup like the Patriots, where they should be up big. They want to get some other work for their backs. We know Nathaniel Hackett has always loved using committees. And right now, about a 40% player right now with Braylon Allen, and making by far the most of his work. Also love Bucky Irving, who's about 30% rostered, not quite as available as Braylon Allen, but if he's out there, would think he is a phenomenal bench stash. 9 carries for 62 yards in week 1, in addition to 3 targets, 2 catches, and 14 yards. Yeah, not a great week 2, 7 carries, 22 yards. Doesn't look awesome, but then you compare it to Rachaad White, 10 carries for 18 yards, only 2.0 yards per carry on the season for Rachaad White. And then he also suffers a groin injury. Now, it's not known to be serious, probably going to play this week. Those are the type of things that can get worse quickly, can flare up at any point. Seems undoubted that Bucky Irving is going to see some volume sooner than later. And even if it's not an injury, remember, Todd Bowles coming into the season said you normally go with the hot hand. It's Rachaad White for now. He's the starter. We'll kind of go from there. Well, it's pretty damn clear who has the hot hand right now. It's Bucky Irving, who looks so much more decisive, who is also a great college receiver. It's not like Bucky Irving is just a pure own runner here. This guy led the FCBS in receptions for running backs last year with 56, caught 56 of his 58 targets, and was phenomenal as a receiver. And I get it. Ultimately, he was so slow at his small size. The RAS score is nothing. He clocked the 4th fastest mile per hour time in college football last year. He has ultimately racked up some gaudy numbers, 2,950 yards from scrimmage and 21 touchdowns his senior season, and was a deadly, deadly zone runner, which is what Liam Cohen likes to do. He led the FCBS in zone yards per carry. The guy is just a glove-like fit for it. We're already seeing it so far. It's just a three-down back in an offense that looks extremely, extremely competent at minimum and potentially explosive so far under Baker Mayfield with Liam Cohen, Godwin thriving out of the slot, Evans there. I want all the pieces I can of this, and to me, sooner than later, it's going to be Bucky's backfield, who was compared by Burt Breer to Kyron Williams, given the way he fit in this zone scheme. So I want all the Bucky Irvin. I am loving him. Now, I was surprised to see out there in 75% of leagues right now is Tyler Algier, potentially the best handcuff out there. We know this guy as a rookie, over 1,000 yards, some of the most impressive yards after contact metrics, just a monster with the ball in his hands. And yeah, he was a complete afterthought in week 1. I get it. 18% of snaps, 14% of carries. He was out-touched 23-3 by Bijan Robinson. Looked like no handcuff of benefits, just the handcuff. But even on that, he would be well worth the ad. We then see his role get elevated to 33% of the rushes in this last week 2 on Monday Night Football. 9 carries, 53 yards, his usual efficient self. Also added a 12-yard reception and has been the best graded pass protector in his 2 seasons as a pro. The guy can do it all on every single down, and we know that this zone running scheme under Zach Robinson looking phenomenal. Bijan looks great. You could make the argument that he could be the number 1 overall pick if we were drafting today. But still, if something happens to him, Tyler Algier would easily be ranked as a top 5 running back, would easily be a guy that you're paying 100% of your FAAB to go get. And it seems like a guy that you can then also put into your lineup in a pinch right now that he's getting about 30% or so of the workload. Love, love, love Tyler Algier. I think those 3, Braylon Allen, Bucky Irving, Tyler Algier, would be kind of the top tier. You can maybe, I'd call it maybe a half tier break, not a huge tier break. You could even maybe lump this guy in with them, and that's Ty Chandler, 29% rostered right now, rips 10 carries for 82 yards, actually out-carries Aaron Jones on the day. 9 carries for Jones, 10 for Ty Chandler, and destroys him in terms of the yardage with, again, those 82 yards compared to just 32 for Aaron Jones. Now, we did see 25% target share go to Aaron Jones to 0% for Ty Chandler, but it's not like he's an incapable receiver. We've seen him has a true 3-down skill set, looking really, really just nifty, nimble, explosive on a 25-yarder in the 4th quarter as they're kind of salting that lead. They know they're running the ball, and he still went up and gashed through a strong front 7 for the 49ers. So you got another one of those nice contingent-based bets that also has a little bit of standalone value should you be desperate to plug somebody in here. And Jones also fumbling at the goal line too. Wonder if that opens up the door to some of the highest value touches there for Ty Chandler. Then a teardrop, I do think, whether you say Ty Chandler's there or not, I do think there's a little bit of a teardrop, but I don't know how deep this one is either. Given Antonio Gibson, 12 touches, 103 total yards from scrimmage. Yes, Ramondre Stevenson is right now the clear-cut focal back, 71% of the snaps, and probably more shockingly, 63% route participation for Ramondre Stevenson compared to just 13% for Antonio Gibson. But the man is making by far the most of his touches here, Gibson. Whenever he's getting the rock, as a Pats fan, I watched it very closely, looking just so spry, churning up the middle, getting outside at a good rate. I've always been a big Gibson fan. So to me, if you can rack up 100 yards on limited work, you've already got some standalone impact. But another one of these guys that should something happen to Ramondre. The Patriots right now rank number 3 in expected backfield points because of how much they fed Ramondre and in the lesser role here, Antonio Gibson. You know Gibson with that fat contract here. If something happens to Ramondre, he has a 3-down skill set. This offense, yeah, it's not the prettiest in the league, but at minimum, Alex Van Pelt, he's known for just churning out great blocking schemes and getting really solid running back production, and we're seeing that right now out of Antonio Gibson. So I think he is a phenomenal running back add if you miss those kind of top tier of guys. The only other running back I wanted to make sure to mention here is that duo in the Texans backfield. Joe Mixon suffered an ankle injury. They're going to be evaluating, quote unquote, throughout the week. He got back into the game, but only lasted a couple plays before tapping himself out. We don't know quite yet the severity of it. It does seem like something that might only be a 1 to 2 week issue, but we know how explosive this offense is, and anybody getting meaningful value. You might assume it's Dameon Pierce. He was entering the season as the number 2 guy. Yeah, Cam Akers, he really earned his way on his team despite tearing that Achilles in November. 7 carries, 53 yards, 3 catches for 19 yards in his last preseason game. And you look at the ultimate preseason numbers. Pierce had 8 carries for 9 yards. And we had Cam Akers rack up 112 yards on 24 carries. It's preseason stats. I get it. We don't want to overreact to these, but that's really the only sample we have behind Joe Mixon. And Akers was far and away the better back, the better zone runner. Pierce has never been a good fit in this Bobby Slowick offense. So ultimately, I think if I had to lean to one, if we do get some rumblings that Joe Mixon is going to miss a game, I kind of like going to Cam Akers here is the play I would go to. Now, we're going to talk about some wide receivers. We have almost 500 of you here with us on this Tuesday night, despite me showing up a little late. Thank you guys for your patience. It's tough working full-time as a teacher, and then we had a lot of things after school we were dealing with today, so I had to get started a little later. I appreciate you guys still sticking it out with me, being here. If you enjoy what you're hearing, please do consider that thumbs up button. Hit that like, that sub, too. We're only 30 away here on YouTube from hitting that 4K goal. We get about 10 a show. We're so close. We'd love to hit it by this weekend, but thank you again so much. Let's dive into now my top wide receivers. Here are the top wide receivers on the Week 3 waiver wire, in my opinion, because it's a big question. How do you replace Cooper Kupp, Deebo Samuel? So many of these injuries popping up here at the receiver position. We're going to need to find some patches here. Who are the best ones to go to? Let's look at the Rams themselves. Anytime you can get a good piece of a Sean McVay offense, a receiver playing with Matthew Stafford, you want to dive deep and check that out. And so far, Demarcus Robinson, not surprisingly, leading the way, 28 of the 32 routes. Only had 4 targets, though. Didn't do anything huge with the volume, but I do lean into him as the number 1 ad of this core. He's the most owned right now at 41%, so decent chance he's already been scooped in your league. But just a reminder, when he finally became a starter last year, final 5 games, he averaged 15.4 points per game, wide receiver 12 in that stretch, never dropped below 10 points, was a top 30 receiver in 5 of those games. It had ultimately was on pace for 90 targets, 60 yards, 60 receptions, 904 yards, and 11 touchdowns. That would have been 224 fantasy points. Very, very solid. So ultimately, I think he, because of that pre-established rapport, all the training camp hype that he was going to be a go-to guy for Stafford, I would lean into what we know. I think Robinson's by far the safest bet. But then it becomes, okay, what happens behind Demarcus Robinson? Is it Tutu Atwell, who had a decent year last year before Puka Nacua became the god himself? Is it Tyler Johnston, who had his shot this week, was second on the team in routes and did absolutely nothing with it? Or could it be Jordan Whittington, a really, really impressive preseason for the kid? And that might be the guy I think Whittington has the sneaky highest ceiling. Let's talk about Tutu real quick. He did have 3 catches, 48 yards when he got in. Ultimately, did run fewer routes. He played just 10 snaps on the day, and compared to 26 snaps there for Whittington. So field time could be an issue for Tutu. We know how tiny he is. We know he can't block, and we know how important blocking is to Sean McVay in this scheme. But ultimately, he's probably Atwell bringing the most juice of any of these receivers. We've seen him again thrive with Stafford, played really, really solid when Kupp was out at the beginning of last year until Puka ultimately just shoved him off, said, I am the captain now. But ultimately, I do think you're looking for that guy. Robinson can kind of be that field stretcher, big body, sideline X guy. You got Tutu more of that, again, another field stretcher, got to getting deep. Those two seem to be kind of competing roles here. To me, if anyone's going to fill that over-the-middle, tough yards, run after the catch, it's Jordan Whittington. And I know his yards per reception, all that stuff was pretty damn ugly at Texas. But he's playing alongside Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, and still you read anybody from Texas, the coaches, everyone raved like this guy's a heartbeat type of guy. The plays with so much grit, so much toughness, the one that will make all of the biggest plays in the moments you need him to. And we saw it come up this preseason. Again, we don't have a ton of sample to go off of, so I don't want to overact to preseason. But this dude in 2 games had 12 catches and 144 yards through those first games and just was a monster after the catch, breaking tackles. And most importantly, he's a phenomenal blocker. Loves to throw the body around, love to open up holes in the run game. And yeah, he came in, played all the snaps once Cooper Kupp was out, kind of played that Cooper Kupp role, fearless and over the middle. He had a rushing touchdown in the week 1 that was called back on a penalty. So we've seen him used creatively already by Sean McVay here. 2 catches on his 2 targets for 22 yards. I was going to bet on anyone to become like a Cooper Kupp and Puka style layup guy out of all the receivers they have here. I think it's Jordan Whittington, and I don't think anyone's going to be bidding much on him. You can pluck him up cheap and at minimum stash him on the bench, see what happens. I do trust Robinson the most. If I had my pick of the litter, yeah, that pre-established history is the nicest, but he's probably gone. And rather than going after Tyler Johnson, Tutu Atwell, I'm going to be going after Jordan Whittington myself. If you don't want to go there, where else can we look for some wide receiver help? Cannot believe these words are coming out of my mouth. Quentin Johnston, though, would be my next most intriguing wide receiver ad of week 3. He led the wide receivers in snaps, routes, and targets for the Chargers. An 86% route rate, a 32% target share here for Quentin Johnston, and looking very deserved he racked up 6 targets, 5 catches, 51 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And as Scott Barrett pointed out in a phenomenal tweet, they are using him far more in that run after the catch role, letting him do his thing. That was what he was really solid at. You look at the body type and you think this is going to be a contested catch maven, a deep down the field streaker because he's got speed, he's got size, but really it was actually just kind of like a large, tall Deebo Samuel, where in college he was phenomenal, getting the ball in his hand, breaking tackles, and doing damage. He was never used that way last year under Kellen Moore, and of course we saw the drop struggles, and it was hideous for so long. But don't forget that all summer we got, Chargers have major plans for Quentin Johnston. He's going to really, if you guys remember this quote, he's going to launch under Jim Harbaugh. And Harbaugh does love Quentin Johnston. This is a guy that buried him when he was at TCU. Johnston had a humongous game against those Wolverines, and it seems like that goes a long way with Harbaugh here. So I love what I'm seeing out of him. He's led the team so far in routes and snaps, not just in week 2, but on the season so far. And I get it. The ceiling is always going to be a little capped. Only 20 total pass attempts, 120 yards for Justin Herbert. But when you're a former first-round pick that a lot of people loved this profile, and you have a chance to be that potential number 1 for Justin Herbert, and if they get into a game script where you are required to throw, like there's a lot of ifs, but when all those things do come together, if they do, there could be some humongous upside there to Quentin Johnston. So that's the type of profile. We're going to go through some other names, some crusty veterans that have some value here. But if you're going to take a real stab at, like, I could find some lightning in a bottle here, look to the Chargers. No pun intended there. But absolutely, Quentin Johnston is one I would look at. Not too far after, I do like Darnell Mooney. I've always been a Mooney guy. I thought he got an unfair shake there with the horrendous quarterback quality of the Bears while he was stuck there. Now, I didn't know if Kirk Cousins was going to be any better after that week 1 dreadful performance, but he looked a lot more mobile. The ball was flying out of his hand, especially in the second half of the game. In fact, Darnell Mooney had no yards, no catches in half 1. He ultimately finished with 88 yards and a score. 7 targets, were tied with Drake London for the team lead there, hauled in 3 of them. Always, again, loved the speed. He looked dangerous after the catch on that go-ahead touchdown that he scored. Really, really solid effort from Darnell Mooney. And I think this is an offense I want to start buying into. Despite that dreadful week 1, they're looking much more stable here with Kirk Cousins looking even healthier. And speaking of crusty vets, Adam Thielen. How is this guy on my list? Only 25% rostered. I do think, though, with the team turning to Andy Dalton, that's really the only reason I have any interest in Adam Thielen. But in Dalton's only start last year, 362 yards, 2 touchdowns, and Thielen himself had 11 catches, 145 yards, and a TD. Now, Deontay Johnson's now here. They drafted Xavier Legette, who I also think in deeper leagues, very interesting to see Legette on benches here. Yes, all those things are going to make this a more crowded target share, but Thielen is out there 75% of the routes. He was a wide receiver 1 for a large portion of last year, and we saw in a very brief, small sample, him and Dalton really connect. So I'm a fan of Adam Thielen. That's a guy that I would throw a handful of bucks at. I know I haven't really been doing the waiver wire FAAB, so just to quickly summarize, if Robinson's out there, I'd say a nice 15-20% bid. Whittington, I don't think you're going to need to put more than $1 on, maybe nothing. You can probably get him for free, even if I think he's probably worth a $5 to $8 bid. I think you can get him for cheap. And Quentin Johnston, $5-ish, $8. I think a lot of people will still have, I do too, a little hesitancy, a little throw up in the mouth when you think of Quentin Johnston, but I am intrigued by what I'm seeing. I would love to have him on my bench. I don't think you're going to need to put more than $2 to $3 on Darnell Mooney, similar with Adam Thielen. All these receivers I'm doing after the running backs. I would give a lot more to get those handcuff high upside backs, a $15, $20 bid to get Braylon Allen, Ty Chandler. These running backs are far, far ahead of the wide receivers, but that's not to say there's no value here. And again, a lot of you might need some plug-and plays with the injuries. Now, if you really only just wanted a 1 week streamer, I might put Yoshivas on the top. It was a scary usage-wise, just 2 targets. But he ultimately hauled in both of them, and both went for touchdowns. And that is pretty on par with what we saw as a rookie. He played very limited routes and snaps and ultimately still caught 4 touchdowns, 3 of them from Joe Burrow last year. Is pretty much just a red zone maybe. Now, he is playing far more routes. You'd love to see a more involved usage, more involved play, but you can't complain when you're getting 2 touchdowns out of the guy. But more importantly, he gets Washington. And if anybody's been watching this team for the last 2 seasons, Washington secondary is, by I'd say a mile, the worst secondary in the league. T. Higgins could be back. It sounds like he's trending the right way, and what a welcome party that could be when you get a Commander secondary. I could see Jamar Chase going absolutely ballistic, but don't rule out Yoshi catching yet another touchdown against one of the most hapless secondaries in the league. He was the star of training camp, all the hype pouring in from Joe Burrow, from the beat writers. Everybody loved Yoshi coming into the year from Cincinnati, and it hasn't been a rip-roaring start to the year, but he has been an every-down player. He's looked pretty decent, and he's going to be expected to kick into the slot even when T. Higgins comes back. So I'm excited to have that big body Yoshi, freakish athlete, heptathlon All-American at Princeton. Let's see what he does as a big slot receiver once T. Higgins is back. Last handful of receivers here. Jalen Naylor. Got to shout out a guy that scored back-to-back weeks. Nice touchdowns from Sam Darnold here. And Scott Barrett tweeting out their new stat there, average separation score. Sounds like Jalen Naylor, it's a small sample size, but he currently leads all receivers across the past 3 seasons in that average separation score. Thus far this year, he's the 5th best overall in and best overall in man coverage. Again, a small sample size, but Kevin O'Connell saying Speedy Naylor, just really, really happy with how fast he's playing. Even routes he wasn't getting necessarily targeted. You see the separation. You see him winning versus man. He just cited him out. And then the broadcasters in that game, sneaky little nugget here, mentioned that they want Naylor to start filling more of the TJ Hawkinson role. So if we get some more of those easy design layups, that could be a lights out. So Naylor, a guy that, again, probably will only cost you $1 at most, but looking really, really solid with Sam Darnold also thriving. A guy that I think, Addison's going to be back, and how much volume is really up for grabs behind Jefferson, Addison. But we did get that quad injury for Jefferson. Looks like it won't be a multi-week injury. Might be just it might not even miss this week at all. But even still, you got the handcuff with benefits type of upside here with Naylor carving himself out at minimum the number 3 receiver role till Hawkinson is back in a Kevin O'Connell offense that's going to consistently post 280 to 300 passing yards any given week. Got to shout out too the last 2 receivers here. The last one I actually have on my list is Alec Pierce. 23% target share so far this year. 40% air yard share for Alec Pierce with 225 air yards. He's hauled in 180 real yards and has a career high 2 touchdowns already on the season, a score in back-to-back weeks for Alec Pierce. He's actually leads all receivers in touchdowns right now and the wide receiver 8 in total fantasy points, but the wide receiver 10 and wide receiver 17 with 21 and 16.6 fantasy points, averaging 25.3 average depth of target. He marries the skill set of Anthony Richardson, that cannon arm, so perfectly. Now, again, how much can we rely on this? It seems like one of those profiles that is bound to crater out as soon as you put it in your lineup. He's going to have 1 target for 0 yards. Anything tied to Anthony Richardson is sketchy, but at minimum, he's doubling up now the routes of A.D. Mitchell, and he has been very productive, Alec Pierce, so far, clearly outproducing even Michael Pittman with Anthony Richardson. So a guy that I certainly will give an extended look to there in Alec Pierce. And last, we're going to wrap up here with just a couple tight ends here, nearly 700 here. Would love to consider hitting that like button, the retweet, the shares, thumbs up, any good stuff. We'd love to have it. It really greatly helps us out. Thank you so much for checking this out. We'll be on those questions in just a second. Got to mention with tight ends, though, Hunter Henry, 12 targets, 8 catches, a career high 109 yards in a brutal overtime loss. This was the best effort, his first 100-yard game since 2019, the second of his career, and looking like the offensive engine for this Pats passing game. And that wouldn't shock me if that actually continues here, given the state of the wide receiver core. Also because of Alex Van Pelt, the offensive coordinator's history. He fed last year David Njoku, top 3 targets, 122 of them. And he finished Njoku 5th in receptions, 6th in yards, 3rd in touchdowns, and 5th in fantasy points. It is a fantasy-friendly role. We've seen this from Van Pelt time in and time again. Loves to feed his tight ends. And last week, Hunter Henry, 50% target share on those 12 looks, 18.9 PPR fantasy points, the tight end 2 on the week. A phenomenal week for him. And I know a ton of us, really, if you don't have Brock Bowers, you don't have Trey McBride, you're probably scrambling at tight end right now. Why not go for a guy that could truly pace the position in targets this season? I do want to give an honorable mention, though, to Mike Gesicki. 9 targets, 7 catches for 91 yards. Not a bad effort at all. A really nice 37-yard catch and run, looking very, very shifty and nimble after the run there. He did only play about 50% of the routes, so I don't want to go too crazy here. But maybe that gets elevated the more and more he plays. It did hype up Eric Aldo a ton in the broadcast and after the game. So I do worry a little bit that Mike Gesicki, it might be more of a flash in the pan here. We shall see. That wraps up all the waiver wire pickups. So again, just want to toss out now my top 10 total guys for the week. So let me pull this on in. Let me get the brand. So these are all the guys I talked about, but I want to make sure, again, it's in order for you here so you know how I would prioritize these guys. At the top of the list in tier 1 is Samaje, Perine, Carson, Steele, Demarcus Robinson. Guys, I'd spend about 25-ish% of my budget for those Chiefs running backs, maybe a 15% bid to 20% bid on Robinson. Then we're looking at Braylon Allen, Bucky Irving, Tyler Algier. Yeah, you got to toss Kareem Hunt in there because maybe he does emerge as the lead back if those guys do not impress in their 1 to 2 week audition here. And also Ty Chandler adds some really, really high upside handcuffs with benefits. Then move on. If you need a starting quarterback, you can even bump Derek Carr higher. I don't know that you're going to need to pay more than 5 to 10% to get a QB. Depends on your league and how thirsty they are. I would say for those handcuffish running backs, 5 to 10% will get the job done for most of them. But if you really want Braylon Allen, maybe you bump it up to 12, 15% just to make sure you get the top guy there. You also got the Gibson, Hunter Henry, Quentin Johnston, Sam Darnold. Again, about 5 to 8%. It gets the job done for this tier. And I wrap up my top 20 overall waiver wire pickups with Mooney, Thielen, Yoshi, Naylor, Pierce, Juwan Jennings with the banged up Deebo Samuel. I didn't really talk about him, but it has been an okay fill-in in the past when guys are banged up there. I don't think you're going to need to pay more than $1. Those guys can probably be free in your league. But that's how I would rank all these guys we have talked about and the money I would potentially spend on them. The last thing we will wrap up with, and then it is on to all of your questions. One thing I get asked about every single week is who are your top week defensive streamers for this one? So week 3, let's dive into the guys. I've seen Chicago. I know they're only 54% out there, but I've seen them in a bunch of leagues I'm in. I know facing Houston last week, they got dropped in a lot of leagues. They've already scored more touchdowns through 2 games than the offense. That's pretty pathetic. It's more of an indictment on the offense, I'd say. But it is also an endorsement of the defense. I think they are supremely talented. Some great secondary members, some great guys up front in that front 7. They played stout defense so far this year. They had 3 picks. Anthony Richardson threw 3 picks last week who they're going up against. They have the second most giveaways in the league here. Could definitely see yet another touchdown from the Bears defense. They are by far the first unit I'd look to. And a unit I do think you can add and kind of set and forget, which is why I might pay an extra $1 or $2 to get a team like the Bears. But if you miss on them, I love Tampa Bay's matchup this week versus the Broncos. How can you not like them. They just held one of the best offenses in the league, the Lions, to only 16 points in their home turf here, shutting them out for the final 18 minutes of the game, looking damn solid. This was without Antoine Winfield, their best safety there. Cansey in the defensive tackle, an absolute beast up there. Doesn't matter. With multiple stars out, they still bend but don't break, giving just 1 touchdown on 7 red zone trips. That's what Tal Bowles is known for. Really, really solid defensive mind. Really held the line here. And ultimately, they get Denver coming up this week. Bo Nix, 0 touchdowns and 4 interceptions through his first 2 games. 6 total points for the Broncos in a losing effort to Pittsburgh in week 2. They've given up the 7th most points to fantasy defenses through the start of the season. 0 TDs and 4 interceptions again. Completing less than 60% of his passes. Not a swimming start for Sean Payton and this Broncos team. I think the Bucs at home are in a phenomenal spot. But if they're gone too, only 6% rostered Green Bay Packers right now, a top 7 unit in total fantasy points so far on the season, averaging over 9 points per game. And that was after facing a tough Philadelphia team. This Packers defense has 6 takeaways, top 3 in the league in that stat. They've also allowed opponents to convert just 6 of 23 third down conversions to start the year, 26%. That is also at the top of the league. And now, after a 3 turnover day of the Colts, they get a team that's turned the ball over more than any other. Will Levis's Titans. They have given the most points up to defenses through the first 2 weeks. They have given up defensive scores by the boatload here, 7 sacks and 5 turnovers through the first 2 weeks of the season. It is just tee them on up, and you saw how bad Brian Callahan was. How much longer could we see Will Levis make these type of mistakes and last? Not much. I would say that leash is getting quite short. But for now, anybody facing Will Levis and the Titans is well worth considering as a streamer. Alrighty, Wolfpack. That wraps up all my pickups of the week. Thank you again so much. Let's dive into a handful of potential pickups and comments here for you guys. I do want to sign off in about 10 minutes at 8:30, so I'm going to set a 10-minute timer. I got to get dinner ready and different things, but I should be able to make it through all of these. So let's see what we can get to here in these next 10 minutes. Thank you again so much for being here and for putting up with me coming late tonight. What's up, Tien? Always here for your boy. Someone dropped JSN. I lost Cup. JSN's the type of guy, yes, you absolutely bid each and every dollar you have left. 16 targets this last week. It was a dream to see his usage. My man Mo over there has a phenomenal follow. Mo_FFB. Great tweet about JSN and his breakout. Over 75% of the 2 receiver sets. Every down player, different layers of the field. Like his ADOT has jumped from 6 to nearly 11. Getting some layup targets too. He is just. I have him on my team. I was getting. If he didn't have a good week this week, I was considering cutting bait, and I was very, very, very happy that I did not do that. So I would, if anybody has JSN out there on your waiver wire, he's the type of guy you blow every single dollar well ahead of any of these. Is Chase Brown expendable now for Perine or Steele? Would you drop Jalen Wright for Jennings? Not for Jennings. I think you're a little higher in Campanelli on Jennings than I am. He'd be like my top 20 pickup of the week. But I do think I would consider dropping Chase Brown. I still worry. 80% of snaps went to Zach Moss. He seemed like the clear featured guy. He just looks like complete and utter butt cheeks. So I feel like Chase Brown might get another crack at being the featured back at some point, and I don't want to cut him if I don't have to. But for Perine, I would, and I might have to do that in my own league. I have a couple other guys I'll probably cut first. But if I had to cut Chase Brown to get Perine, I would. I don't want to though. I might cut Wright first, but I also love stashing him too. But yeah, I guess you could cut Chase Brown if you had to. If this usage continues, it's brutal because it's clearly Zach Moss right now. Lomi, what's up? Excited. Yeah, thank you for that comment on the other YouTube video. Glad to run it back indeed. Happy to be back. Good, sir. Super weak after losing Pacheco. Cook, Dowdle, Brown, Wright. Yeah, that's not very good. Drop any of them for Steele. Certainly not Cook. James Cook is obviously a strong option. I think if you need somebody usable, yeah, I think Wright has to get expended. Although I will again caution, I would definitely go Perine over Steele myself. Not the most popular take here. I think a lot of people pumping up Steele. I am on team Perine though myself. So Tony, gonna get a quick sip of water and then get to this one. Have Hurts, Baker, and D. Jones. How much would you spend on Dalton? Or think I stash upside guys like Winston, Flacco. I like Dalton in super flex league. 362 passing yards, 27 total points for the Panthers last time he made it one single start. I'm excited to see what the dude has in his next game. And maybe he's got nothing, but I'm a believer in Dave Canales, and I love the fact that they just ripped it out. Bryce Young, you're not the dude. Clearly not the dude. We're not going to waste our time here. Maybe Andy Dalton can rally the troops, show that the Canales offense is actually worthwhile. Maybe it's not. Maybe Canales is a fraud. We'll find out. But I think Dalton gives them at least a fair shot. I would go for it, and I would give, a good amount of my FAAB, probably like 30%, something of that nature, because Daniel Jones, that's going to implode. You have a Baker, you have Hurts. You don't necessarily need him by any means. But, yeah, 25, you know how it goes in a super flex league. Any QB is worthwhile. I'd say about 15 to 20% is probably, given that you're pretty strong still, though. 80 Mitchell droppable? Yeah, I think so, Lomi. But for those guys, yeah, I think for Braylon Allen, I'd drop him. Playing, again, well behind Alec Pierce already, and now Downs comes back? No, thanks. I can cut him. Taysom Hill? Yeah, you can drop him. I'd rather have Hunter Henry, something steadier at the tight end position. But Conkey or Quentin Johnston? That's a great question. Got into my head, I still believe in Ladd the most, a more diverse of a player, in my opinion. If we look back, though, and say, former first-round pick Quentin Johnston is the guy, wouldn't shock me at all. And I don't think so. I know a few people bringing up Juwan Johnson. Again, my 20th ranked pickup guy this week. Sure, it's a great offense, and there's going to be some volume for grabs, but, you still have Kittle. You still have Ayuk. Jordan Mason's looking phenomenal. It's still going to be just scraps left for Jennings. So I'm not overly interested in him. In fact, I'd almost rather stash Ricky Pearsall for right now and see what happens there. Brutal. 0-2 so far. A good team, but you're leaving the best on the bench. That's too bad. Carr or Goff? I mean, how do you not ride Carr at this point? I think I'd rather, as crazy as that is, Goff seems like the better long-term investment, probably safer. But this week against Philly, for example, Carr probably going to go off again. I think I'm going to roll with him. And we already went over all the streamers. I think it's Chicago, then the Bucks, and then the Packers is where I would rank them. Would you trade James Cook and Pollard for Achane? That's a tough one. That's a pretty hefty price because I love Pollard. It sounds like you have the depth, but I'm a little worried about buying too heavily right now into Achane in this attack. What are they going to do at quarterback? Is it really Skylar Thompson? And what does that mean for this team? And no, I love Nico Collins too much. I think you're too eager to move Pollard. And as you can see with these injuries, Ethan, depth can be a huge piece here. I don't know that you're getting better of either deal there. So no, I wouldn't do that. William, I'm a little worried with my team's depth. JT Gibbs, and after that, Brown. Yeah, that's brutal. I would say all the guys I went through, though, in terms of both the Chiefs guys would be worth a number 4 claim. Braylon Allen, I think, is also worth that as well. Kirk and Gus for Dak. If you need the QB, I think Kirk and Gus are garbage, so well done. And I think Caleb's droppable. I think he sucks. I'm not a Caleb guy, not at all. Ross and Lit Meadows, let's go. Great to see you. Thanks for tuning in today. We got Jonathan Santiago. Would you trade Ayuk and Bowers for Chase? Yeah, McBride already. I think I would. I think you're buying low, and it's a nice time to do it, but I really love Bowers. But, yeah, I think I would make that move. I have Mosher, A.J. Brown, Njoku, all questionable or worse. Yeah. Welcome to the party, Tunes. Everybody has banged up people. That's probably less bad than a lot of people out there. But that's not good. That's still bad. I'm not trying to downplay what you got here. Drop first. 80 Mitchell John. You don't need to keep Ty Johnson. I'd probably cut him, especially because you need Parkinson to probably fill in for Njoku, see what he does as a target share. I think 80 Mitchell and Ty Johnson can both be cut, whichever one you prefer. I'd probably cut Ty myself. Kareem Hunt worth -10 FAAB. You'd think so, Mo, and probably why would he sign with a team if he was really worth anything? But again, it's do you have to be any good at all to thrive with Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes? I don't know. Prone or Steele? No Hunt been signed. I think you're saying Perine Steele. I don't know what the question is, Tyler. Sorry, but I already talked about it. You rewind it to the beginning. I think it's the most important question this week. what do you do with the Chiefs running backs? And to me, Samaje Perine is the guy. Probably going to talk about it, but would you say Steele and Akers are the next guys up? So Mr. Trey Sarah, rewind that one to get the full take on this. But I think Perine is actually the guy for the Chargers, and I do think Akers is the guy for the Texans. I have Bucky, Jalen Wright, and Braylon Allen. Would you drop one of them for Perine? I think it has to be Jalen Wright, unfortunately, as much as I love him. I think the other two are all ahead of him and on the handcuff radar at this point. And I would protect Brees. As I've seen with Jordan Mason, I want to protect my main investments at this point. Stafford drop with his 2 receivers? Yeah, I think so. Mr. Trey Sarasenko. Yep, I do. I have shipped Chase and Singletary for CD. Charlie Prebs, I love the move. I think he did a good job. I didn't mention the Chiefs running backs. Tyler, that was the first thing I did. You just came late, brother. There you go. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, David, for clarifying that. But I do prefer Perine. But I do think it's the most important story of the week. And yeah, I talked about it at length. And there's an article at roastjournal.com breaking down the boys as well, written by yours truly. So check out that content as well. What's up, everyone? Based off matchup, what's a better waiver wire ad, Hunter Henry or Gesicki? I think it's Hunter Henry for sure. Rank these: DeMarcus, Jennings, Downs, Tyler Johnston, Quentin Johnston. I think Quentin Johnston, I would go DeMarcus and then Quentin Johnston are the 2 main ads there. Giuseppe, Hunt, Steele, or Perine. I like Perine. Talked about that at length again, guys. Pay attention to the early part of that. Huge fan of the show. Thank you, Captain Joking. Already subbed. Love that. It's just sold flowers and worthy for Bowers. It's a bold one, but hey, you might be getting the number 1 tight end there. I think he might even be better than 2023 Laporta. He's the second main vein in that offense at worst, and he is just thriving right now. 2 seasons to drive Pitts. You know me, Bulldog. I've never been a Pitts guy. I don't think yet, but yeah. I don't know. I think he's just trash. Stream Raiders. I don't think so, Campanella. I mean, you could, but again, Andy Dalton, definitely better than he gets credit for. I think they're fool's gold. I would go with any of the other 3 guys first. Wolf, good evening to you, Wes. Thanks for all the work. Would you drop Taysom Hill or Colby Park? I'd drop either of them. Yep. I would probably prefer keeping Colby with the Rams, open target share right now. How do you feel about Godwin? Oh, I absolutely love him, Kels. You should check out the rest of season big board. I think he's at the 19 plus 40 ECR. Yeah, rest of season big board is updated there at Roto Street Journal. Should I hold Bucky or drop for Steele, Perine, or B. Allen? I love Bucky, but I would probably drop him for any of these 3. I rank them Perine, then Steele, then Braylon Allen. But if you can find something else to drop, I'd like to hold him. And this is going off already. Where's Donta Foreman? I think he's distantly behind these guys. He looked so bad there, Wes. C. I only got 2 more questions. I'll finish them off here for you. Is Khalil Shakir viable at wide receiver 2? I'd like him more as a wide receiver 3, but looks like the clear number 1 guy is Deshaun. For the Bills, yeah, he's startable, but you don't have hopefully you have something better at 2. But as a 3, yeah, I think you can get by with it for sure. And last one, is there any upside I can use in my receiver room to upgrade my tight end? I mean, you got some injuries here. So, yeah, you can try to make a move here. Maybe you can get like Brock Bowers or something like that. But it's so bad at tight end that like Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, really the only 2 guys I'd be trying to trade for. If you can get Ayuk, move him for Bowers, I honestly might do that there, Jesse Lopez. But let's see what A.J. Brown's health is. I don't know if I could drop Kincaid quite yet. I probably have him just a little bit higher rest of the season, Campanelli than Hunter Henry, but it's getting close. It's getting damn close. I'll tell you that. So if you do it, it's not unwarranted at this point. But I think Kincaid has better days ahead. Alrighty, guys. Thank you again. HD, last question of the night. Devonta Smith and Ramondre for Olave, JSN, B-Rob. If you need the depth, yeah, I think you're getting a nice price. Olave, this offense thriving. He hasn't done much himself, but I think that will turn around. Love what I saw from JSN. I mean, it's a pretty hefty price because I love D. Smith and Ramondre. It really comes down to like if you're going to start all of Olave, JSN, and B-Rob, you get 3 good starters, and it's probably worth more to your team. But if you didn't need that, if one of those guys going to your bench, well, if it's just 2 for 2, I prefer Devontae and Ramondre to any of the guys in that trade. It's more so like if you need that depth, pull the trigger. But if you don't need the depth, then no, I wouldn't worry about it. In an 8-man league, you might not need the depth there. It's more about the studs there, HD. Alrighty, Wolfpack. Nearly 1,000 of you. Awesome to see it. Love it. Check out rotostreetjournal.com for my week 3 rankings, for my rest of season rankings, for all of our waiver wire content, all of our good stuff. On your way out, please consider hitting that thumbs up button for your boy so we can continue to get out to more people. Sub to the channel if you haven't already. We'd love to have you. We'll do this every Tuesday. I'll be on those at 7 more often than not. It's a really busy day today. Next time I'll be live is Thursday for your sit-start show ahead of Thursday Night Football. Would love to have you guys there with me and Truth answering all your questions right up till kickoff. Join us then. Check out the content again at rotostreetjournal.com. Follow me at rotostreetwolf on Twitter. And the Fantasy Fullback Dive is where you can get this in podcast form as well. In a world full of fancy sheep guys, be that wolf. Later.